or in the case of OxyContin, and there's been documentaries made about this now, it appears, looks like there are some problems with this medication, like we were told or was misrepresented in terms of the addictive potential, and now this is a huge problem. Next, we have a bit of a loaded question. The question was, how does the FDA approve bad drugs? So an example I think they gave was like OxyContin. Another example that gets brought up is Vioxx, for example. So there is an approval process that happens. And in these cases, I don't know that the drugs were necessarily bad in that approval process. The data probably looked quite good, both of these pain medications, coincidentally.
Stage 2 and stage 3 data.
Yeah, so you have a relatively short window of time to show, hey, this drug has a positive effect and a reasonable safety profile. And then when you would see the problem emerge is in what's sometimes called phase 4, sometimes called post-marketing data, and you see, hey, like in the case of Vioxx, people are actually having vascular events. It looks like this medication is a problem. Or in the case of OxyContin, and there's been documentaries made about this now, it appears, looks like there are some problems with this medication, like we were told or was misrepresented in terms of the addictive potential, and now this is a huge problem. So those things are probably were just not present in a very short window of time.
Yeah, and part of this loaded question is asking, if you look at the average number of RCTs that it takes to approve a new medication or a new drug, it certainly goes down. So previously it was several, and often it is just 1 or 2 studies. So the average number of studies that are done on a specific drug has decreased significantly for stage 2 and stage 3 data, but I wouldn't necessarily say they get approved easier. There is just literally not a reason for other centers other than the ones that get funding, often from the drug company, to run a study like that. There is more money being spent on advertising and less money being spent on study. So something like limiting the amount of money spent on advertising, or at least saying your ratio needs to go, because if you look at nonprofits, it's kind of the same thing. Some nonprofits spend almost all their money on ancillary, whatever, paying support staff. They don't actually send the money. And obviously, depending on what nonprofit sector it is, like there is more background work that needs to be done for some, but you want the money to actually go to help people. And with drug companies, it's the same way. You want the money to actually go towards funding new studies, not for the investors in the company, not for advertising. But at the same time, there's also less independent sources. Tiny Foundation is an example of an independent non-pharmaceutical company that does fund research, like Rhonda Patrick's and Andrew Huberman's.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the prevalence of pharmaceutical advertising. And to be honest, I don't watch a lot of television, but I've heard people talk about when you have something like golf or Formula One racing, that's going to tend to be a older male demographic that's watching that. So then you may see prostate cancer drugs, targeted advertising, because that population is just more likely to be experiencing or to soon experience prostate cancer. And then, sometimes patients are aware of things before their providers are. So there's certainly been cases where patients have told us about a test or a study or something like that that was not on our radar just because of the massive information out there. So it's sort of a double-edged sword, because then you have patients seeing these drugs that are under patent currently, very expensive, often not suited to their exact case. And I think people make the point that pharmaceutical advertising is sort of a oasis for pharmaceutical companies, because it just does not occur in other parts of the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, and there's a lot of other things that need done. But I think that answers the advertising question pretty well.